by 79 member states. Since the meeting of the Bureau, formal credentials have been received from one member state. Information concerning the appointment of their representatives to the Assembly has been communicated to the Executive Director by means of a cable or a telefax from the head of state or government or the Minister for Foreign Affairs, by means of a letter or note verbal from the mission concerned, or by means of another form of communication by 77 member states. 37 member states have not communicated to the Executive Director of the United Nations Environment Programme any information regarding their representatives to the Assembly. Alternatively, they have indicated that they will not participate in the third session. The Bureau recommends that the third session of the United Nations Environment Programme accept the credentials of the member states. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. Does the Assembly wish to take note of the report? I see no objections. It's so decided. This concludes consideration of Agenda Item 3. I now wish to turn the attention of the Assembly to Agenda Item 7, International Environmental Policy and Governance Issues. As you may recall, this agenda item, together with outstanding proposals considered by the Committee of Permanent Representatives, was allocated to the Committee of the Whole. I now invite the Chair of the Committee of the Whole, Vice President Mr. Matusak of the United States of America, to present the report. Please, John.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellency, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct honor to present the results of the work of the Committee of the Whole to you. I'm happy, I'm actually excited to report that the committee successfully concluded the assignment that it received from this Assembly. The Committee of the Whole held 2 meetings on December 4th and a resumed second meeting on December 5th, 2017. It considered a draft resolution, several draft resolutions and a draft decision assigned to it by the Assembly on the basis of the report of the chair of the open-ended meeting of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, Ambassador John Moretti, as well as one new draft submitted by the African Group on the consolidation of headquarters function. A draft resolution on South-South cooperation was not introduced and was therefore not considered. Through the hard work, but especially the cooperation, commitment, and flexibility of the delegations, and with the able guidance and skilled dedicated contact group chairs and facilitators of Friends of the Chair committees and groups, the committee concluded its work. And it agreed to recommend for adoption by the Assembly 5 draft resolutions and 1 draft decision. These are the draft resolutions: pollution mitigation and control in areas affected by armed conflict or terrorism, environment and health, marine litter and microplastics, addressing water pollution to protect and restore water-related ecosystems, and implementation of paragraph 88A through H on the outcome document of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rio+20, The Future We Want. This is the ultimate title of the aforementioned resolution by the African Group on consolidation of headquarters functions. We also completed the draft decision, a provisional agenda, date, and venue of the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. I would like to thank our rapporteur, Mr. Travis Sinclair of Barbados, and the following chairs of contact groups and facilitators of Friends of the Chairs groups, whose skill helped us to complete our work successfully. The contact the chairs of the contact groups were Husham Al-Fityan of Iraq and Ms. Tarja Fernandez of Finland. The facilitators of our Friends of the Chairs groups were Mr. Andrew McNee of Australia, Ambassador Elizabeth Taylor of Colombia, and Ambassador Fernando Coimbra of Brazil. I wish to thank all the distinguished delegates for entrusting me with the responsibility of chairing the Assembly's work of the work of the Committee of the Whole. It's been a privilege for me to serve as the chair at this important, transitional, and therefore complex session, which had very limited time for negotiations. I'm satisfied that the package we are delivering is of well-prepared draft decisions will meet your approval. We set firm goals for ourselves, and we agreed to boundaries that allowed us to deliver to you unbracketed text on the penultimate day of our meeting. We also chose not to negotiate by exhaustion and go all night, and instead we chose to suspend our negotiations at 1 a.m., allowing the negotiators time to reflect on the issues and the Secretariat time to recover, which I believe they needed after the incredible work that they had put in. In addition to the important resolutions that we are delivering to you, I hope that the constructive approach that the Committee of the Whole took and all of its participants and facilitators and chairs took of a disciplined negotiation of cooperation and hard work will serve as an example to future UNEAs. If adopted, the resolutions and the decision will make a positive contribution, I believe, not only for UNEP, but we hope that it will, in fact, improve the state of our planet and the lives of our people. Finally, I wish to thank the Secretariat, with whom I've worked closely, for their continued and incredibly hardworking efforts to make this all possible. And I want to thank the interpreters and all of the service providers who toil behind the scenes to make our work successful. Once again, Mr. President, I present the draft resolutions and decisions for the Assembly's adoption. Thank you very much.
Does the Assembly wish to take note on the report of the Committee of the Whole? I see no objection. It is so agreed. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Chair, your rapporteur, and the entire Committee of the Whole for working tirelessly and collaboratively to contribute to the success of this session of the UN Environment Assembly. Thank you very much, John, for your effort. Before closing this agenda item formally, we will now proceed to agenda item 10. Therefore, I request that all delegations to reserve their interventions after the adoption of the resolutions. We will now invite the Environment Assembly to turn its attention to agenda item 10, adoption of the outcomes of this session. As you are aware from the report of the third meeting of the open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives, we have now in front of us a valuable number of proposals, which we will now proceed to consider and adopt. The first proposed draft resolution is UNEP/EA.3/L7, Contributions of the United Nations Environment Assembly to the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L7? I see no objections. It is so decided. I announce resolution contributions of the United Nations Environment Assembly to the, I'm sorry. Yes, it is adopted, yes. The next draft resolution is UNEP/EA.3/L13, investing in innovative environmental solutions for accelerating the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L13? I see no objections. It is so decided. The next resolution up for adoption is UNEP/EA.3/L14, managing soil pollution to achieve sustainable development. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L14? I see no objections. It is so decided. The next resolution for adoption is UNEP/EA.3/L23, preventing and reducing air pollution to improve air quality globally. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L23? I see no objections. It is so decided. The next resolution for adoption is UNEP/EA.3/L24, eliminating exposure to lead paint and promoting environmentally sound management of waste lead-acid batteries. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L24? See no objections. Is so decided. I would like to bring to the Assembly attention decision UNEP/EA.3/L18, management of trust funds and earmarked contributions for adoption. Does the Assembly wish to adopt decision UNEP/EA.3/L18? I see no objections. It is so decided. I now declare agenda item 6, administrative budgetary issues, closed. I would like to bring draft decision UNEP/EA.3/L2, extension of the delivery date for the 6th Global Environment Outlook Report to your attention for adoption. Does the Assembly wish to adopt decision UNEP/EA.3/L2? See no objections. It is so decided. I now announce decision extension of the delivery date for the 6th Global Environment Outlook adopted. I now declare agenda item 8, update on the 6th Global Environment Outlook, closed. As earlier reported by the Chair of the Committee of the Whole, we now have in front of us a valuable number of proposals for your consideration. First, the resolution UNEP/EA.3/L5, pollution mitigation and control in areas affected by armed conflicts or terrorism. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L5? I see no objection. It is so decided. Next draft resolution is UNEP/EA.3/L6/Rev.1, pollution mitigation by mainstreaming biodiversity into key sectors. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L6/Rev.1? See no objections. It is so decided. Next resolution for adoption is UNEP/EA .3/L8/Rev1 Environment and Health. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution EA.3/L8/Rev1? Rev 2? I'm sorry, Rev 2. I read again.
Correct. Distinguished President, we are informed that in the resolutions portal is Rev 1, what we are adopting. So it's Rev 1, despite us informing the... I agree. It says here Rev 2, but in the portal is Rev 1. Okay, so I propose you proceed in the adoption of Rev 1.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. So that the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L.8/Rev1 as it is in the portal. I see no objections. It is so decided. Next resolution for adoption is UNEP/EA.3/L.20 Marine litter and microplastics. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L.20? I see no objections. It is so decided. I now announce resolution. No, that's already taken care of. The next draft resolution is UNEP/EA.3/L.27. Addressing water pollution to protect and restore water-related ecosystems. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L.27? I see no objections. It is so decided. Next draft resolution is UNEP/EA.3/L.28, implementation of paragraph 88A to H of the outcome document of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rio+20, the future we want. Does the Assembly wish to adopt resolution UNEP/EA.3/L.28? I see no objections. It is so decided. Seeing no other item, I now declare agenda item 7, international environmental policy and governance issues, closed. I would like to open the floor at this moment for any delegations that want to use the floor for a statement. I know that the United States wants to give a statement as well. Chile.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are pleased with the adoption of these resolutions, and we would like to thank the facilitators, the Secretariat, and our fellow member states for their positive and constructive approach. We would like to clarify certain issues in these resolutions, and we request that this statement be reflected in the record. Consistent with long-standing policy, the United States does not support references to the transfer of technology to the extent that such language could promote technology transfer that is not both on mutually agreed terms and voluntary. For the United States, any interpretation to that effect will have no standing in future negotiations. We will continue to oppose language that we believe undermines intellectual property rights. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. That statement is going to be noted in the proceedings. Mexico.
Thank you, President. Mexico welcomes the fact that this session broached the issue of biodiversity and its relation to pollution and the relation to degradation in biodiversity in key sectors, which is a key step forward in terms of the Cancun Declaration on conservation and the sustainable use of biodiversity, as approved in COP13 of the CBD. This is undoubtedly a great contribution to increasing public awareness and political will with regards to the promotion of biodiversity on the international agenda. We have a valuable opportunity here to do even more over the next 3 years so that we can broach the issue of integrating, mainstreaming biodiversity in an inclusive manner, as we have committed to in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. Egypt will take on the presidency of COP14 of the CBD in 2018, and Peru will host an intersessional meeting in 2019 to prepare for the paradigm shift in terms of biodiversity after 2020. And we also saw the approval of the document in China during COP15, or will see that. But the translation of this text in Spanish is not completely related to the English, or accurate according to English, in paragraph 3 of the preamble and 1b and 1c of the document. We also think the document on link to the high-level political forum on sustainable development will provide greater clarity on the link between UNEP and the high-level political forum and sustainable development and the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Therefore, we'd ask the Secretariat take note that we have seen an inconsistency in paragraph 1 of the text, and the translation into Spanish contains an error in paragraph 3b. President, the timely provision of resolutions in all 6 official languages of the UN in compliance with our rules of procedure has enabled capitals of our countries to consult all texts for this session. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, México.
Very much, Mexico.
Usted.
I agree with you that translation into the 6 official languages has been of benefit to us, and that for all member states. The corrections which you have suggested will be taken into account. Therefore, I would like to thank you for them, and we will send these to the, or we'll ask you to send these in writing to the Secretariat so that they're taken note of correctly. Chile, please.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to commend you for the great successes in this UNEA, and I also wanted to thank Eric Solheim. Both of you have allowed to put pollution at the center stage of the discussion. We've seen great words like clean seas, breathe life, end pollution. And also we wanted to thank the recognition the UN Environment provided for my president, Michelle Bachelet. I think we need to continue to work on the air quality issue, of course, and I just wanted to commit as Chile that we'll be demanding Euro 6 standards for new vehicles in Santiago and for buses also, light-duty vehicles, and we will be progressing in the wood-burning bans that we have enacted up to now. We're in the middle of a large wood-burning stove overhaul project that will benefit 200,000 homes. We've reached around 10% of that goal within this government, and we need to have around 400,000 homes being overhauled with their home insulation retrofits. There's a massive effort in cleaning the air and fighting climate change. I also wanted to say that in terms of our commitments, we recently approved the climate mitigation strategy by the energy sector, driven by the energy sector, in which all the energy sector players committed to a 90% renewable energy goal, peaking emissions by 2025, and having solar and wind being the cheapest source of new energy. This has allowed us to be able to use electricity for heating, which is also the cheapest way to heat a home in Santiago. And our biggest challenge is transportation, so we want to increase electromobility. And that is why this coming Wednesday, the Ministry of the Environment, Energy, and Transportation will all announce electromobility strategy for Chile. This is the cheapest way to mitigate climate change in the transportation sector, according to many studies that we've done. And that's why also we're adding 100 new electric buses for Trans-Santiago and with the next contracts. And we're expanding the metro system, which today is powered by 70% renewable energy. Finally, I just wanted to say that it's important that we recognize pollution in the cost of our economy. Carbon pricing is a crucial opportunity to include that kind of signal into the market forces, and that's why we are able to have economic and environmental goals be aligned. And when these goals are aligned, sustainable development becomes inevitable. This also comes with the emissions of new cars, which have a tax on NOx and CO2 emissions. And this has led Euro 6 to be coming into Chile before it's even a regulation. And that's because and this has also led incoming cars to have 30% less emissions than last year. So I just wanted to thank you again for showcasing pollution at the center of this discussion. Sometimes within the COPs we forget why we're doing this, and I think the work that UN Environment and you, Minister Gutierrez, have really helped put health at the center of our climate and our environmental goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chile, and thank you for the good example you are giving us to all. Malawi, you have the floor.
Sorry,
SIP,
it was by error.
Oh, what's an error? CBD, please. The Secretariat of the CBD.
Sorry, that was an error as well. I beg your pardon.
All right. I now declare agenda item 7 closed, and thank you to all. I would like now to turn the Assembly's attention to agenda item 11, election of officers. In accordance with Rule 18 of the Rules of Procedure, the United Nations Environment Assembly will elect a president, 8 vice presidents, and a rapporteur from among its members. Allow me to give the floor to the Secretariat to inform the meeting on the nominated candidates. Please, Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to inform that the Secretariat has received nominations from all regional groups for the positions of President, Vice Presidents, and Rapporteur of the 4th session of the Environment Assembly. I have the honor to inform you that, first of all, the Eastern European Group of States has nominated His Excellency Siim Valmar-Kiisler, Minister of the Environment of Estonia, for the position of President of the 4th session of the UN Environment Assembly. The same token, I wish to inform you and all member states that the African Group of States have nominated the following 2 vice presidents. The first one being Her Excellency Edna Molewa, Minister of Environmental Affairs of the Republic of South Africa, followed by His Excellency Mr. Pacome Mubele Bubeya, Minister of Forest, Sea and Environment of the Republic of Gabon. The Asia-Pacific Group of States has nominated His Excellency Dr. Kaveh Madani, Vice Minister and Deputy Head of Training and Research, Acting Head of the Center for International Affairs and Conventions at the Department of Environmental Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Eastern European Group of States has nominated His Excellency Mr. Vladislav Smrs, Deputy Minister at the Ministry of the Environment of the Czech Republic. The Latin America and the Caribbean Group of States has nominated His Excellency Mr. Fernando Estelita Lins de Salvo Coimbra, Ambassador of the Federative Republic of Brazil, while Antigua and Barbuda has nominated His Excellency Molwin Joseph, Minister of Health and Environment of Antigua and Barbuda. The Western European and others groups of states have nominated His Excellency Mr. Timo Tiilikainen, Minister of the Environment, Energy and Housing of Finland, and has also nominated His Excellency Franz Perez, Ambassador for the Environment of Switzerland. Finally, for the position of Rapporteur, the Asia-Pacific Group of States nominates His Excellency Raza Bashir Tarar, High Commissioner and Permanent Representative of Pakistan. That concludes the nominations as received by the Secretariat by all regional groups. Thank you, President.
Thank you very much. Knowing this then, does the Assembly wish to elect His Excellency Sim Valmar Kisler, Minister of Environment of Estonia, as President of the next session of the UN Environment Assembly? I see no objections. It is so decided. Does the Assembly wish to elect the following as Vice Presidents of the next session of the UN Environment Assembly by acclamation? From the African Group, Her Excellency Edna Molewa, Minister of Environmental Affairs of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Pacome Moulet Boubeya, Minister of Forest, Sea and Environment of the Republic of Gabon. From Asia Pacific Group of States, His Excellency Dr. Kabe Madani, Vice Minister and Deputy Head of Training and Research, Acting Head of the Center for International Affairs and Conventions in the Department of Environment, Islamic Republic of Iran. From Eastern European Group of States, His Excellency Mr. Vladislav Smirs, Deputy Minister, Ministry of the Environment of the Czech Republic. For Latin America and the Caribbean, His Excellency Mr. Fernando Estellita Lins de Salvo Coimbra, Ambassador of Brazil in Kenya, and Her Excellency Molwin Joseph, Minister of Health and Environment of Antigua and Barbuda. And from the Western European and others group of states, His Excellency Mr. Kimmo Tiilikainen, Minister of Environment, Energy and Housing of Finland, and His Excellency Mr. Franz Perez, Ambassador for the Environment of Switzerland. I see no objections. It is so decided. Does the Assembly wish to elect His Excellency Bashir Tarar, High Commissioner and Permanent Representative of Pakistan, as a rapporteur of the next session of the UN Environment Assembly? I see no objections. It is all decided.
Now we will open the floor.
I open the floor for statements from Nigeria. Algeria. Please.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. I'd like to congratulate you, and on behalf of the African Group, we would like to express our position. Our expectation, which is based on standing practice and the rules of procedure, is that the members of the CRP be accredited as permanent representatives with UNEP. Another expectation, which again is based on standing practice, is that any nomination of a representative to serve as a member of the Bureau must be either of a ministerial level, a member of the government, or at the very least a high-level civil servant. This is why we express our concerns regarding the dual capacity of some of the appointed individuals as members of the CRP and members of UNEA. This is a situation which is likely to create an over-representation, a needless over-representation for several member states. It is essential to maintain the independence of UNEA as compared to the CRP, and this to ensure the integrity of the rules of governance within our organization. The same is true if we want to ensure that UNEA is a world leader in terms of programs for the environment. Of course, we are very proud of the success of our summit. Having said all this, thank you.
Thank you, Algeria. We will take note of your statement. India, please take the floor.
We'd like to speak later. Thank you.
Thank you, India. Yemen.
You take note and you propose later.
We'll take note of the statement made by Algeria, and we close this item agenda. Thank you very much to the new members of the Bureau of the UNEA and the incoming president, now president of UNEA 4. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is the provisional agenda and date of the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. The Committee of the Whole presented decision UNEP/EA.3/L.16/Rev1, provisional agenda, date and venue of the 4th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Does the Assembly wish to adopt decision UNEP/EA.3/L.16/Rev.1? I see no objections. It is so decided. Before I close this agenda item, I wish to propose to the Assembly to warmly acknowledge the generous hospitality offered by the government of Kenya and its people, offered for this successful 3rd session of the Assembly. I see no objection. It is so decided. I now wish to call upon the distinguished Minister of Estonia to make a statement. Please, Minister, you want to come?
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you, Edgar. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'll make just a very brief statement. I am highly honored to have the opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the outstanding work and dedication of the President of the 3rd meeting of the Environment Assembly. Mr. President, you have carried the spirit of this meeting with you until the very end. Thank you. It will be a challenge to meet such leadership. I promise to stand for the United Nations member states so that the work that needs to be done to protect the health and well-being of the environment and people will carry meaningful results. I can already express the importance of involving all stakeholders, including the private sector, NGOs, academia, and others, as it has also been stressed several times during this Assembly. Ownership of a common goal and action grows from partnerships. I commend the President for his transparency, inclusiveness, and openness, and being a true role model in his approach. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to share with me your expectations and ambition for the next United Nations Environment Assembly and build on the very much fulfilled expectations for this third session of the Environment Assembly. And I would like to call upon all of you for your engagement. I welcome and look forward to your contributions on how to ensure a meaningful and impactful fourth meeting of the United Nations Environment Assembly. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, everyone.
I now invite the Executive Director of UN Environment to give us a statement. Yeah, you.
Good evening. I will really like to thank you all, because this has been an amazing environment assembly. People have come from all corners of the world, from all walks of life, from government, from civil society, from business, from science, and you have made this a really fascinating, inspiring, and I think impactful assembly of the United Nations environment. So thank you to all of you for making this possible. And there are a number of firsts here. It's the first time we make a declaration of such a forum. It's the first time we're launching a number of young champions of the earth. It's the first time we have this big business forum. And one first which I really took note of, because I think it's not only the first in UN environment, but the first in UN at all, at least in any UN meeting I have noticed. Because yesterday when we started the assembly, I was there with my watch, and I looked into it. The assembly was assumed to start at 10. We started at 10:00, like a Japanese train. We went out exactly on time. I've never experienced anything like that in the history of the United Nations. But of course, more importantly, we were able to come together on one topic, a pollution-free planet, with full respect that there are many other environment and development issues which are also central, but we wanted to focus on this here because of the importance of bringing the world towards a pollution-free planet. It's so central to humans, to our life, to our health, to our well-being, and it's important for poor and rich alike, even if poor people are more hit by pollution than rich people. And we have made huge success. We have been able to set this out to the world. We have showed the direction, but then still people tomorrow will ask, what's next? What now? They will say, you did well, good assembly, but how do we follow up? And let me make some suggestions to that, because I think in our response to people, we need to be very practical. Plastics. There's a strong, strong determination here to stop the plastic scourge in the oceans, but how do we actually do it? I suggest 3 main avenues of action. Let us phase out and stop using and avoiding what we do not need. The average North American is using 600 straws a year. Do we need straws? My mother died this year at the age of 92. I cannot recall she used a straw in her entire life. She could drink from her bottle, from her glass, and from her cup, and she had no problem without straws. If anyone needs a straw for any purpose, let them get it. Let all restaurants all over the world put up a poster which saying, if you want a straw, you call the waiter and you will get a straw, otherwise we will not provide it. And it may seem as a small issue, but if you go to Bali, a huge amount of the plastic in the oceans there and in many other tourist spots in the world are straws. Then there are a number of plastics which we do need, at least we need the function. We need to preserve food longer. We need bottles. that many of these can be replaced by biodegradable products. If we put pressure on the industry, I'm not in the slightest doubt that we will see an enormous amount of products coming out of cassava or potatoes or sugar canes or forest or whatever it may be, replacing the present plastics. And then there are all the plastics we do need for moon rockets, to make our cars lighter, to make our solar panels. All that plastic need to be recycled into new products. This is not really difficult. This is well beyond what we as humans can do. It's much easier to do than many of the problems we have resolved in the past. So let's just set ourselves in motion to get these done. Same issue people will ask on air pollution. How do we do it? We have all agreed that we want to phase out air pollution. We see a lot of progress. I just congratulated the Chinese Minister Li with the progress in China, where we now see rapid decrease in pollution in the Beijing, Shenzhen, Hebei area in central China, and there are many other success stories of the same. For that to happen, we need to make the shift from coal into solar. We make the shift from gasoline cars into electrical cars. We need to organize our cities better, need to plan them better, need to make them greener, and of course we need to provide mass transportation to people in all the cities of the world. Again, doable, it's happening. We just heard the Chilean minister speaking about how they do things like in Santiago, Chile, and many other cities can be held up as an example. Again, completely within what we as humans can do. Let's just get it done. We also need to act on chemicals. This has been the year where we agreed on the Minamata Protocol. We agreed to phase out chemicals, and indeed nearly every nation in the world are now putting in place the right legislation, but still people on the ground need to see the results. There are 15 million artisanal miners. President of Guyana spoke about it. I spoke to the Minister of Peru. She spoke about it. We need to provide alternatives for the miners. They want income for themselves. They want to provide for the family. Indeed, it's a main issue of income for many states, but we can solve the problem replacing the mercury with new materials if the states are reaching out, and indeed if the aid agencies and the UN bodies are supporting states in getting these done. I believe that when we solve problems, it's nearly always with a combination of two traits. One is determination. We need to know where we want to go. The other is pragmatism. We are employing what works and avoiding what does not work. I saw an interview with the Prime Minister of Singapore once, which really appealed to me. Don't know whether it appeals to all of you, but Prime Minister Lee said, "What is the ism? What is the ideology of Singapore?" he was asked. And he said, in Singapore we have just one ism. It's not communism, it's not socialism, it's not conservatism, it's not liberalism. Sorry for all of you who are communists or socialists or liberals or conservatives, nothing wrong with that. But he said, in Singapore we have one ism, that is pragmatism. When we see something working, we do more of it. When we see something failing, we try to avoid repeating the failure. And at least we cannot quarrel on the issue that this has served Singapore very well. But there's hardly any other success story on the planet going from absolute poverty to the absolute affluence in such a short period of time. So obviously it has served Singapore well. But pragmatism without direction is not meaningful. You need to know where you want to go, the determination. We want a pollution-free planet. That's our direction. But to achieve that, we are pragmatic in the ways we operate. And you have shown great pragmatism in this Environment Assembly. No one has stuck to the position saying that only I get it right, everything will be resolved. No, we've been there for each other and resolving problems together. Let me pay particular tribute again to the Palestinians and the Israelis for this spirit of pragmatism. That was very important, I think, for Palestine and for Israel. but it was also important for the rest of us, and we will now set out an assessment of the environment situation in Palestine, and I will call upon the rest of you to support, because when that assessment obviously will show that there are environment concerns and issues in Palestine as everywhere else, we will call upon you to support efforts to resolve those problems, and then we need other actors also, not just the Palestinians, and not just the Israelis, not just the Arabs, but a wide global support. I will also thank the one person who's most to be thanked in this event, Edgar Guterres, but let me extend it to your team, not just you. You have brought a really extraordinary team from a fantastic, extraordinary nation of Costa Rica. I related to a few of them. They are so good, so determined, exactly this combination of determination and pragmatism, which you have shown, as with some said, added the humor and humility and the warmth, human warmth, which you have provided us with. Thank you so much, Edgar. I will not mention a lot of others, but I cannot avoid mentioning Jorge Laguna Cels, Ibrahim Tio, and the great staff of UN Environment. You have exactly the same fantastic determination, worked night and day, but still been flexible and tried to accommodate as much as possible all the wishes of member states. And the two of you, maybe because you can speak in Spanish, so I don't understand it, but the two of you, Edgar and Jorge, has been a fantastic team, really taking us through this. So thank you to all of you. Then I will thank our host, the Kenyan government. I will in particular thank President Kenyatta, who took from his precious time at a time, of course, when after the elections here, he will have any number of issues to put forward in Kenya. He took all his time, he came here, and please remember, he told all of you that you should support UN Environment more. If you have forgotten it, we will send that his speech to you so you can all remember that message. Please support us more as the #1 UN entity headquartered outside Europe, and trying to bring an African also perspective to the global environment issues. But I'd like to really extend the thanks to Kenyan government, Kenyan people, and President Kenyatta. Let's give them applause also. Finally, just one comment on my side. A person I met said, the most important word in the world today is the word together. And I agree very much with that. So I said repeatedly, there is no limit to what we can resolve together. If the United States work with China, if India work with Africa, if Europe work with Latin America, if we all work together, we can resolve any issue. Humanity has resolved any issues in the past. We abolished slavery. We brought women's liberation. However, there's a lot more to be done. We have cured a huge number of the major diseases I just discussed with the Indian Minister Harsh Vardhan. By the way, he's one of the pioneers really doing this. First time I came to India, there were hundreds of thousands of polio cases in India. Last year, not one. He is one of the persons who is sitting there. He's one of the persons making that miracle happening in India, so we can give him an applause for that also. He's a doctor by profession, and now he's the Minister of Environment of India. Can there be a better combination? But my main point in this context is the fact there is no limit to what we can resolve together. If we ever allow some political forces to splinter us, to work separately, to start fighting, start competing, then we will have huge difficulties. We will waste our energy on quarrels and problems rather than making our energy available for resolving problems together. So thank you for the spirit in this conference, because that has been exactly that, the spirit of togetherness, which is so important to the world. So let us take that back home to whatever nation we come from, to whatever profession we are from. Let's embrace the spirit of togetherness. So thank you for being together here.
Thank you very much, Eric. I would like now to invite Her Excellency, my friend Carol Dierksborg, Minister of Environment of Luxembourg, to present the outcomes of the Women's Minister of Environment breakfast. You can do it from the floor, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ministers, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving us the opportunity to present the outcomes of the Women's Ministers and Leaders for the Environment Breakfast meeting on 5th of December at this UNEA 3. More than 100 women and leaders met and discussed in roundtable 4 focus areas of gender and a pollution-free planet. We shared concerns, gaps and good practices, and we made recommendations on action points to be undertaken from national to global level. The Cabinet Secretary Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources of Kenya, Professor Judy Bakungu, in her keynote speech presented how she and her ministry have achieved the single-use plastic bag ban in a period of 6 months and the impacts this has had nationwide. Each of the tables discussed a call for action, calling on UNEA to strengthen support for member states in developing programs in 4 key areas, namely policy, actors, information and action. We need to support development of gender-responsive policies and programs to address pollution based on precautionary and human rights principles through application of gender equality and safeguard measures. Second, it's necessary to engage grassroots gender-oriented organizations in the design and implementation of pollution reductions programs and alternatives to polluting practice, and safeguard policies. Third, we need to improve access to information related to gender and chemical safety and support studies with gender disaggregated data on exposure and impacts on chemicals on different groups of women and men. There is a need to develop data on the costs of inaction to increase political will to take action. Fourth, support quick-win pollution prevention efforts such as phasing out of single-use plastic, eliminating harmful chemicals in products and personal hygiene products will bring us further together. The moderator, Dr. Alice Kodia, Environment Secretary of Kenyan Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources, called on the ministers and women leaders present to join the network of women and leaders for the environment to continue contribution on gender integration into pollution programs. So we look forward to working together with all member states, UN agencies, major groups and stakeholders towards a gender equitable and pollution-free planet. Thank you very much and congratulations for this successful UNEA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Now I propose that we consider general statements and the remaining of the consideration of Agenda Item 9 as decided in our first plenary meeting. To articulate this consideration of the first part of this item, the Secretariat has compiled a list of speakers in accordance with Rule 35 and 36 of our Rules of Procedure. In order to ensure that all representatives wishing to take the floor are allowed to do so, I would like to remind the representatives that the Assembly has limited the time on speeches to a maximum of 3 minutes. Please be aware that the microphone automatically cuts off after 3 minutes. It is my honor to invite the delegation from India to take the floor now. Thank you. India.
Thank you, Mr. President. We are happy that all the resolutions and the decisions taken during the current United Nations Environment Assembly have been adopted by consensus. We commend the leadership of the President of UNEA and thank the Chair of the Committee of the Whole, as well as all the facilitators. I shall also like to place on record India's appreciation of UNEP Secretariat under the leadership of Mr. Eric Solheim for successful conclusion of this assembly. I would also like to congratulate on behalf of India, Estonia, for having been elected as the President of UNEA 4th. I am also happy to announce that India is hosting the World Environment Day 2018. We invite all of you to join the celebrations in India on 5th of June 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, India. I now invite Vanuatu. You have the floor. Thank you, Vanuatu.
United States.
United States.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make this very brief. We wish to express our sincere appreciation for the leadership of President Gutierrez and his team for the manner in which preparations for this UNEA 3 were conducted. He listened long and well to each party and did an incredible job to coalesce all of our divergent positions into the ministerial document which was adopted. It was truly an extraordinary effort. Furthermore, we would like to express our gratitude to the Secretariat for its tireless efforts to plan and efforts to keep communications clear and up to date. The leadership dialogues, science and business forums, and other outside side events with a wider range of stakeholders provided us with a wealth of information and ideas for future action. And I would be remiss if I did not also thank the Chair of the COW, John Matusik, for his firm leadership and his adept use of his friends, which saw us through to an agreement on the resolutions. Finally, thank you to all the delegates, all the negotiators, chairs, for their cooperative spirit and their willingness to agree and compromise. And thank you all to bringing us through to a very successful conclusion of this UNEA 3, which I hope advances our efforts towards a pollution-free planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States. Singapore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Singapore delegation joins other delegations in expressing our warmest congratulations and sincere appreciation to you, Mr. President, the Executive Director of UN Environment and its Secretariat, as well as member states for all your positive contributions in achieving a satisfactory and successful outcome for UNEA 3. Specifically, we would like to commend the President, the UNEA Bureau, the CPR Bureau, and the Secretariat for your efforts in keeping the preparatory process for UNEA 3 transparent, fair, and inclusive. This is particularly important for member states, such as Singapore, that are not represented in Nairobi. We hope that we will continue this spirit of cooperation, hard work, and working in good faith as we work towards a similar successful outcome for UNEA 4. We wish everyone a good holiday ahead and safe travels for those who are heading home. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Singapore. Colombia, el micrófono es suyo.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to speak in the name of the Latin American and Caribbean group. Mr. President, I am honored to give this speech on behalf of the Latin American and the Caribbean countries. We would like to express our gratitude to the Bureau of the Assembly and the Bureau of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, in particular to the President of the UNEA, Mr. Edgar Gutierrez Espeleta, and his team, who honored our region in their functions. We would also like to commend Mr. Eric Solheim, Executive Director of UNEP, the Secretariat, the interpreters and translators, and the people of Kenya for their warm hospitality. GRULA considers it urgent to focus the effort of the international community in tackling in a preventive manner the root causes of pollution, while maintaining and improving the strategies to combat its effects. This will minimize the economic, social, and environmental cost of pollution for our peoples. GRULAC would like to recognize the effort and compromise made by all delegations, which allow us to reach consensus on all resolutions and decisions that were discussed during the last week. We are glad to recognize the important role played by some GRULAC countries in facilitating the negotiations process. Our region is convinced that the wide range of resolutions adopted by UNEA will allow us to move towards a pollution-free planet. We are particularly glad that UNEA has agreed to systematically transmit messages and input to the high-level political forum on sustainable development. We underline the importance of allowing every country, representative of UN agencies, and stakeholders to express their views in this assembly. While we understand the need to be efficient with the time at our disposal, strict timing of national statements cannot always ensure that our views are adequately captured. Notwithstanding, GRULAC acknowledges that the deliberations and interactions between leaders were more dynamic, clearly showing the improvement of UNEA, and we hope this spirit is maintained in the future. GRULAC believes that the interseasonal period should be strengthened in preparation for the next open-ended CPR and UNEA 4. Let us use the time at our availability in an efficient manner to ensure success in terms of substantive preparations, preparations and the drafting of resolutions. This way, we will avoid rushed negotiations and the creation of multiple contact groups at the same time. Finally, Mr. President, we would like to express our profound gratitude for your commitment and for facilitating open discussions on the outcome document. In this sense, wholeheartedly congratulates the Assembly for the adoption of the Ministerial Declaration, which conveys a strong message on how to beat pollution. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Muchas gracias, Colombia.
Much Colombia.
European Union.
Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I have the honor to deliver this closing statement on behalf of the European Union and its 28 member states, and I would like to inform you also that Ukraine aligns itself with this statement. Mr. President, we came to this session of the Assembly with high hopes, and I believe that today the results of the Assembly confirm the role of UNEA as the world's highest-level decision-making body on the environment, and its important contribution to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and to the Paris Agreement. The ministerial declaration we have just adopted is a clear signal of our willingness to step up together action towards a pollution-free planet. And we are very grateful to you, Mr. President, for your leadership in steering this process in an inclusive manner towards a successful conclusion. The substantive resolutions we have adopted today will provide us further guidance in our national policies and in international cooperation in fighting against pollution. And we are also very grateful for the broad support which was given to the resolution on environment and health that the EU and its member states submitted. The scientific evidence is clear on the many linkages between environment pollution, human health, and the biosphere. We count on all of you to join us in putting our agreement into action. We have also made another significant step in the fight against marine litter and plastic pollution by agreeing to address and remove the barriers to combating this type of pollution more effectively. We have recognized the importance of eliminating such discharge into the oceans. This will not be easy, but now our actions have a clear sense of direction. On behalf of the European Union, we have also put forward 20 different policies and initiatives as voluntary commitments against pollution. Many of these also involve countries from other parts of the world. The European Union and its member states will contribute to this, and more than 2 million citizens from all over the world have signed the pledge to beat pollution. Let us remind each other of these commitments as we move forward after this meeting. We need to continue to focus on science policy interface to enable good data, indicators, knowledge and assessments for sound policy decision-making at all levels. And we also re-emphasize the need to send the right economic signals and redirect investments to prevent and minimize pollution, and we look forward to continue working with the private sector. Let me also stress the positive spirit generated by all participants at this UNEA session, who have shown strong commitment and determination towards our goal. Let's keep the momentum, and we are very grateful for the different opportunities of engaging with stakeholders from civil society, the private sector, and science. We are very impressed by their contribution to our common cause. And this engagement with stakeholders, as Eric Solheim was recalling, should be further strengthened in subsequent meetings of UNEA. Finally, let me conclude by congratulating Minister Siim Kiisler of Estonia on his election as President of UNEA 4. We are, of course, very proud to see an EU member state leading the Assembly during the next phase, and we are confident that the UNEA presidency will continue to be in very safe hands. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you. Zimbabwe, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to mention that I'm delivering this statement on behalf of the President of the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment, AMSEN. Your Excellency, Mr. Edgar Guterres, President of UNEA 3, the Executive Director, Mr. Eric Solheim, Your Excellencies, Heads of Delegations, distinguished delegates. It is an honor and pleasure for me to deliver this closing statement on behalf of the Africa Group. It has been a very productive 9 days of intense negotiations and dialogue since the open-ended Committee of Permanent Representatives commenced discussions on the important subject of pollution. We can reflect on the outcomes with great satisfaction that we have started the first steps in a long journey towards addressing pollution in all its forms. The third session of UNEA has unanimously adopted 13 resolutions and made important decisions. I wish to thank all delegations for their constructive engagement that has led to these decisions and resolutions. That is the Nairobi spirit, and we're all proud of this achievement. Going forward, our focus should be on effective implementation of these outcomes. Mr. President, I applaud the CPR Chair and his Bureau for their excellent leadership during the OECPR, that is the open-ended CPR, and for preparing the documents that we considered during this session. We also thank the facilitators of the various resolutions for their dedication, commitment, and patience, which has resulted in consensual outcomes. It will be remiss of me if I do not acknowledge and appreciate the sterling work that the Executive Director and his able team in the Secretariat have done in facilitating our work. Sometimes negotiations would go past friendly hours to the late hours of the morning, and the Secretariat remained diligent and supportive. The Africa Group also thanks the Union staff for all the necessary logistical support that they efficiently provided for our meetings. Mr. President, the ministerial declaration we adopted this morning is a historical achievement, and we hope our future work will be characterized by the spirit of give and take so that we can work together in harmony as we address the environmental challenges that confront our planet and indeed our common home. Mr. President, in conclusion, I congratulate you, Mr. President, and your group, GRULAC, for your successful presidency and wish you well in your future endeavors. I also congratulate the incoming president and his bureau and assure them of the support of the Africa Group at all times. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the government and the people of the Republic of Kenya for hosting this very important meeting under very congenial conditions. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Zimbabwe. On behalf of the group of African countries, I now give the floor to Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Ethiopia would like to recognize and also appreciate the exemplary leadership exhibited by His Excellency Dr. Edgar Guterres, Minister of Environment and Energy of the Republic of Costa Rica, and the President of UNEA. I would like also to congratulate his team and also the hardworking chair of CPR and his team. The outcome of this meeting has clearly demonstrated that when we are willing and working hard together, we can come to a very successful end, and this is also what we can take with us back home. Mr. President, Ethiopia would like to underscore the fact that international cooperation and the partnerships play a crucial role in the implementation of the decisions we took in this UNEA and previous similar meetings and previous conventions so that we all march together toward this pollution-free planet. Hazardous waste management needs technology and human and infrastructure capacity. These capacities are limited in many developing countries, including my own country, Ethiopia. Therefore, we call upon member states and international institutions that have the capacity to avoid hazardous wastes and manage them properly to closely work with us so that we all live in a pollution-free planet. We would like to reiterate that we need to act now in a coordinated way for effective implementation of our decisions. Finally, Mr. President, we congratulate Mr. Kessler, Minister of Estonia, for the election as President of UNEA 4, and also the newly elected Bureau members. And Ethiopia looks forward to closely working with the President and his Bureau. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ethiopia. Now I give the floor to our friend Yuri Gwakunko, Minister of Environment of Kenya.
Your Excellency, President of UNEA 3, Executive Director, Your Excellencies, Heads of Delegation, distinguished delegates. Mr. President, I align my statement to the Africa Group statement. I am also privileged to deliver this closing statement on behalf of the Kenya delegation. Kenya is honored to have hosted more than 4,300 delegates during this session. We thank you all for taking the environmental pillar of Sustainable Development Goals seriously and keeping the Nairobi spirit alive. I recall my President's speech during the opening ceremony on the need for a strengthened UNEP through an effective consolidation of headquarter functions in Nairobi. I'm pleased to note that the Assembly has adopted a resolution towards ensuring this is realized. I thank you all delegates for the constructive engagement and indulgence during the whole period of UNEA, as well as the intercession period. It is out of your tireless efforts that we have proudly adopted all these resolutions, decisions, as well as the ministerial declaration by consensus. I thank you, Mr. President, for your dedicated engagement during the negotiations for the ministerial declaration. This has set the momentum for future sessions of this Assembly. It is now upon all of us to implement these important outcomes of the Assembly. We must all act collectively to address all forms of pollution. Mr. President, I thank your Bureau members who have steered this process to its successful completion and the various facilitators of the resolutions for the commendable work. I acknowledge the CPR Chair and the Bureau members for their leadership during the Committee of Permanent Representatives. I also acknowledge the Executive Director and the whole team in the Secretariat for facilitating this meeting. Mr. President, as I conclude, I congratulate you, Mr. President, for your successful presidency with the support of your Bureau members and wish you well in future assignments. I also congratulate the incoming President and his Bureau and assure them of Kenya's unequivocal support. Lastly, I invite all of you to take some time out of your hectic schedules and visit magical Kenya. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you. And now I give the floor to Mr. Abdallah Muqsit from the IPCC, the World Meteorological Organization.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Guterres Espeleta, Minister of Environment and Energy of Costa Rica, President of UNEA, dear Eric Solheim, Executive Director of United Nations Environment, distinguished delegates. I am delivering this statement on behalf of the Secretary General of WMO, Peter Talas. Ladies and gentlemen, the role of the World Meteorological Organization is to provide the latest and the best data and information of the state of climate and the impact of human activities. According to the latest WMO Greenhouse Gas Bulletin, complementary to UNEP emission gap report, annual average concentration of carbon dioxide exceeded 403 parts per million in 2016. Emissions are leveling out, but concentration, because CO2 remains accumulated in the atmosphere, increased at a record pace from 2015 to 2016. The year 2016 was the warmest in record, and sea surface, ocean temperature, and are warmest on the record. Global sea level continues to rise, and Arctic sea extent contracting. Ocean acidification threatening marine ecosystem, and fisheries and coast coral reefs are bleaching. The North Atlantic hurricane season broke records and led to massive loss and damage in the Caribbean and US. Together, the Greenhouse Gas Bulletin and Emission Gap Report support the IPCC process and provide the scientific base for UNFCCC negotiations and monitoring of climate action. WMO and environmental partners are developing an integrated greenhouse gas information system with refined methodologies. More measurements at high level of details and atmospheric models should be used to improve national action reporting in relation to national determined contribution. Another aspect to mention in relation to the theme of this Assembly toward a pollution-free planet.
Sorry, I remind you that you have been allowed 3 minutes to speak. I'm sorry. I give the floor to Fatima Denton from the Economic Commission for Africa.
Mr. President, Excellencies, Africa's development aspiration is to turn its industrialization and urbanization plans into engines of growth, pollution-free and climate-resilient development. Pollution from industrial, agricultural, and other human and natural causes constitutes significant cost to African economies and reduce its potential to realize Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063. Air pollution causes around 600,000 deaths every year across Africa. Agriculture remains the mainstay of African economies, yet as the continent modernizes its agrarian systems, pollution-related costs will increase. Mr. President, at the Economic Commission for Africa, we argue that a green future is not a choice for Africa, it is a development imperative. We argue that a green industrialization will enable Africa to sprint towards structural transformation, deliver on inclusive growth, create jobs, and safeguard its natural resources. For Africa, a green industrialization is not simply about meeting carbon emission targets, it's a precondition for sustainable development. The time is ripe. Africa can emerge as a leader in the development of greener technologies and design a new future that will draw on the significant co-benefits of health, inclusive growth, and energy security inherent in a low-carbon development. Thank you.
Thank you. I give the floor to Her Excellency Josefa Leonel Correia Saco from the Africa Union Commissioner, high level.
Thank you, President. Mr. President, Excellencies, all protocol observed, I would like to convey our appreciation to the United Nations Environment for the organization of this unique event, and to the government and people of Kenya for the warm hospitality accorded to me and my delegation. Let me also congratulate the President of the Assembly for initiating a transparent and multi-stakeholder consultation process that is aiming at developing a vision and achievable action to address pollution on a global scale. Mr. President, the theme of the third 2017 Environment Assembly towards a pollution-free planet is very timely, as is holding at the time that the global community is focusing on sustainable development. Pollution threatens the very pillars of sustainable development. It is a threat to health and well-being and accounts for a significant percentage of annual loss of human life. It is a challenge for both developed and developing countries. However, the situation of Africa is worse, as the region is always a victim of dumping of hazardous waste, including e-wastes, leading to all forms of pollution, including water contamination and loss of biodiversity. Africa is the world's second driest continent after Australia, with only 9% of the global renewable water resources to support 15% of the global population. Pollution threatens to aggravate the situation and accentuate poverty in Africa. Cities and urban environment in Africa are some of the challenges laboratory of pollution. Traffic congestion, the use of old vehicles, urbanization, the use of wood for a source of domestic energy all contribute to pollution in a big way. The solution to pollution in Africa is intertwined with effort to address climate change and sustainable development on the continent. Africa has identified a number of major regional projects related to renewable energy, transport infrastructure, which have potential to cut greenhouse gas emissions significantly and thus make Africa a global carbon sink. I wish to conclude by reiterating that pollution in all its forms requires concrete international action and cooperation, as well as the involvement of the stakeholder. Implementation of multilateral environment agreements, sustainable consumption, and all other related initiatives have a key role to play in ushering up the pollution in Africa. I wish to further reiterate that the African Union Commission, under the distinct leadership of His Excellency Moussa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, remains determined and fully committed to work with the regional economic communities, member states, all relevant stakeholders, and partners.
I'm sorry, thank you very much. I now give the floor to China. Please, China.
Thank you, sir. At the closing of the Assembly, I feel obliged to make a few remarks. I wish to thank the President and Secretariat, and I thank the government of Kenya for its contribution as a host country to the Assembly. We appreciate the remarks made by the Executive Director, especially he mentioned that we should unite in our efforts to defeat pollution. 20 years ago, I first came to Kenya. I noticed that there was an old famous saying in the country, if spiders can unite, then they will be able to tie down a lion. I think this saying well elaborated the meaning of the together as mentioned by the Executive Director. I'm convinced that under the guidance of the Executive Director and the President of the Assembly, we members can unite in implementing the resolutions or decisions that we have adopted. We congratulate on the successful organization of the business forum. I think the combination of policy and business will give a huge boost to the implementation of relevant resolutions. In conclusion, I thank everybody, and I look forward to seeing everybody in 2 years' time in 2019. Thank you.
I give the floor now to Mr. Kosi Latu, Director General of Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environment Program. Spread.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. SPREP is honored to be part of UNEA 3. As the intergovernmental organization responsible for biodiversity, climate change coordination, waste management and environmental monitoring and governance in the Pacific Islands, SPREP is acutely aware of the pervasive and persistent nature of pollution and the toll that it has on the health of communities and the environment. Pollution and growing volumes of solid and hazardous waste are major threats to the environment and the sustainable development of Pacific Islands, driven by economic growth that has been based on a linear economic model and demand for commodities by a rapidly increasing population. The Pacific region is a recipient of marine pollution, which has originated from other distant countries and maritime activities through its transport by ocean currents and the concentration of waste in gyres. Like climate change, the negative impacts are experienced disproportionately by Pacific Island countries and territories, while other nations mainly bear the responsibility of causing them. Of particular concern is the increasing prominence of marine plastic pollution and marine debris, with multiple adverse impacts to many sectors of society. The issues of military legacy waste from World War II shipwrecks and nuclear testing form part of the marine pollution story in the Pacific region. SPREP recognizes that good practices in waste and chemical management apply to and offer solutions for both land-based and maritime sources, with flow-on benefits for mitigating climate change and enhancing ecosystem and species conservation. Pacific leaders in September of 27, when they met for their annual meeting under the Blue Pacific banner, committed themselves to fast-track the development of policies to ban the use of single-use plastic bags, plastics and styrofoam packaging, and call on Pacific Rim partners to join and commit to action on addressing marine pollution and marine debris to maintain the environmental integrity of the Pacific Ocean for people, planet, and prosperity. At this UNEA 3 Assembly, SPREP publicly pledges its support to the Beat Pollution Engagement Campaign to help end pollution of the Pacific region's air, land, waterways, and oceans, and safely manage chemicals and wastes for member countries through the collective actions and by reducing its own pollution footprint in the region. The SPREP pledge recognizes that pollution and growing volumes of solid and hazardous waste are major threats to the environment and sustainable development of Pacific Islands, as articulated through a specific regional waste and pollution management strategy referred to as the Cleaner Pacific 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor now to Christophe Basibamo from the East African Community.
East African Community, sorry.
East African Community, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish, first of all, to congratulate you, President, for the excellent organization of the Assembly and wish you success. Your Excellencies, all protocol observed, the East African Community is a regional intergovernmental organization comprising Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, Uganda, and the United Republic of Tanzania. This is a regional economic community where you are, and you are all invited actually in the East African community. The community has begun implementing the customs union for common market, and then it is now a common higher education area, which is also implementing the single tourism visa, among others. We are here proud that the East African community has already 2 partner states, namely Rwanda and Kenya, who have already put a ban on plastics. And we are still mobilizing other partner states to come on board. East African community commits to invest in the removal of environmental risks to human and environment in a more inclusive and integrated programs under productive social and infrastructure sectors, including A, promoting biodiversity protection and restoration, the use of affordable, more efficient, cleaner and safer energy appliances and improved technologies, access to and exchange of information on pollution, low carbon development initiatives and programs, among others. B, protection of all rivers, lakes, and wetlands, targeting sustainable development. C, developing and maintaining regional transboundary emission inventories for main pollutants and develop emission standards. D, fast-tracking implementation of the East African Community Program of Action of the National Agreement on Air Pollution. And I wish to inform the audience that the East African Community has already put in place a regional bill when it comes to ban plastics. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, East African Community is committed to deliver and invites all stakeholders to conduct tangible actions in the implementation of agreed commitments resolutions and decisions. And here we inform all of you that we are ready for partnership. Let me conclude finally by also congratulating the new president and the new team, and we inform them that we commit actually to work together towards success.
Thank you very much, East African community. I give the floor now to Mrs. Beatriz Pacunega Manano, Office of the Special Advisor for Africa.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to deliver these remarks on behalf of the UN Office of the Special Advisor on Africa, UNOSA. Allow me to congratulate you, Mr. President, and the team for the adoption of the Ministerial Declaration on the UN Environment Assembly at this third session. The theme of the 2017 UN Environment Assembly is of significant importance to Africa, given the profound negative effects of pollution on the continent's endeavors to advance inclusive economic growth and sustainable development. The reliance in many African countries on the extractive industries sector to drive growth and generate revenue through the exports of primary commodities requires international support to reduce and mitigate the risks associated with the extractive industries. Facilitating access to environmentally sound technologies, institutional and technical capacity building support, and strengthening the capacity of national data systems are crucial for enhancing national and regional action on pollution caused by plastics and other forms of pollution. It's in line with the mandate of OSA of analytical and advocacy work that the Office of the Special Advisor on Africa focuses on mobilizing international support for Africa's development and ensuring coherent and coordinated UN system support. In this regard, providing platforms for discussing Africa's development challenges that traverse the economic, political, social, and environmental pillars of sustainable development and putting forward policy options to tackle them is high on OSA's agenda. And that's why OSA welcomes the adoption today of the Ministerial Declaration, which will go a long way in strengthening Africa's development in an environmentally sustainable manner. Finally, Mr. President, I'm confident that the adoption of the declaration will help putting forward concrete policy recommendations to bring our world closer to achieving the objectives of a pollution-free planet while supporting Africa's ambitious transformative Agenda 2063 and its aspirations towards an integrated and prosperous Africa that is underpinned by infrastructure development, regional integration, and industrialization, among others, in a sustainable manner. I thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor now to Benjamin Schuster from the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights. Ben, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, allow me to congratulate you on your leadership of the Third United Nations Environment Assembly. I would also like to thank Costa Rica and UN Environment for joining OHCHR and sponsoring a side event on human rights and pollution earlier this week. The event emphasized that pollution is a human rights issue. Although pollution poses a grave threat to all of us, it disproportionately harms the poor and disadvantaged. This drives inequality, threatening efforts to fulfill all human rights for all persons, to safeguard a healthy and sustainable environment for present and future generations, and to achieve the objectives of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In its Resolution 35/20, the Human Rights Council recognized that the unsound management of chemicals and waste could have negative implications for the effective enjoyment of all human rights. Governments, which have obligations to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights for all persons, therefore must protect human rights from pollution-related harms. Failure to regulate pollution adequately or ensure access to effective remedies for those affected breaches this obligation. To avoid this, states should take rights-based environmental action. Pursuant to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, children's best interests should guide effective decision-making. Laws and policies should minimize children's exposure, call for precaution in the face of uncertainty, and preserve the environment for current and future generations. The Human Rights Framework in Rio Principle 10 established that persons affected by pollution have the right to participate in decision-making processes, access information and justice in environmental manners, and be free from reprisals for exercising their rights. Today, many of those affected by pollution do not have access to justice, information, and decision-making processes. Even worse, environmental human rights defenders seeking to exercise these rights may be the subject of harassment and physical harm. Ensuring their rights is a moral and legal imperative and a prerequisite for effective decision-making. Decision-making processes should be participatory, evidence-based, transparent, and free from conflicts of interest. Environmental health and human rights impact assessments should guide more effective decision-making, and a strong conflict of interest policy should guard against regulatory capture. States do have an affirmative human rights obligation to control pollution through effective regulation of businesses. Businesses themselves have a responsibility to respect human rights in all of their actions. In the event that pollution-related harms occur, states should ensure that those harmed have access to effective remedy and enforce the polluter pays principle of accountability. Rights-based laws, plans, and policies are necessary to protect all people from pollution-related harm, ensure the benefits of development are equitably distributed, and preserve the planet. For this reason, we urge that the decisions that you make at the United Nations Environment Assembly now and in the future, as well as the actions you take at home to carry them out, reflect relevant human rights considerations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, man. I give the floor now to Mr. Karti Sandilia, Global Alliance on Health and Pollution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I speak on behalf of the Global Alliance on Health and Pollution, or GAP. GAP is a collaborative community that includes a number of developing countries, bilateral and multilateral donors, and relevant United Nations agencies, including UN Environment. GAP's objective is to address pollution and health at scale. Our mission is to work for a world where the health of present and future generations, especially children and pregnant women, is safe from toxic pollution. In October this year, we published the Lancet Commission report on pollution and health, and we are delighted that UN Environment, an active GAP member, picked a pollution-free planet as the theme for UNEA 3. Mr. President, we believe that the resources currently allocated to prevent and remediate pollution do not do justice to what is the single biggest killer in the world today. Instead, we need to urgently mainstream and prioritize action on pollution within national and international development plans. It is critical that governments elevate the profile of pollution control in development budgets and that their development partners respond appropriately. Unless we work together, we will not be able to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 3.9, which requires that by 2030, the number of deaths and illnesses from all forms of pollution be substantially reduced. Mr. President, programs and projects to address pollution should focus, at least in part, on reducing the burden of disease from pollution by measuring public exposures and prioritizing pollution challenges and solutions based on health impacts. Planning to address pollution effectively must also involve all the relevant government agencies and not be considered just the responsibility of ministries of environment. The Lancet Commission highlighted the extreme toll that pollution takes on health and economic productivity, but data gaps remain. Decision makers need more complete data on the impacts of pollution at the local level, particularly of exposures to chemicals of known toxicity such as lead and emerging pollutants such as endocrine disruptors. These are largely undercounted at present in studies on the global burden of disease. Until this data gap is filled, we will continue to underestimate the true costs of pollution. We hope UNEA 3 will prove the inflection point when global action on pollution begins in earnest. We thank UN Environment for its continued support and the Government of Kenya for its warm hospitality. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you. I give the floor now to the League of Arab States.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. أرجو.
Thank you, President. First and foremost, please allow me to align myself on behalf of the group of Arab states with those that have paid tribute to the sound preparatory work put into UNEA 3. This meeting has been a success thanks to the great quality of Mr. Gutierrez and those he is working with. We'd also like to thank the Executive Director of UNEP and the entire team of UNEP for their efforts, their tireless work in preparing for this session. We would like to reiterate our support for UNEP and for UNEA. We hope that we can meet our goals, that is, protecting the environment and combating pollution. We would also like to reiterate our support to efforts to strengthening the Bureau of UNEP here in Nairobi. We would also like to thank the government and people of Kenya for the hospitality which has been shown to us and the immense support we have received. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I give the floor now to Mrs. Stella Simiju from the Business and Industry Major Groups.
Thank you, Mr. President. Speaking on behalf of the Business and Industry Major Group, Business and Industry would like to congratulate you, Excellency, Member States, and UN Environment on the successful adoption of the Ministerial Declaration, the resolutions, and decisions taken during this UNEA 3. We specifically thank you for the clear action and solutions-oriented approach to reduce pollution and its risks to the people, the planet, and prosperity. We are grateful for the challenging and encouraging words from many of you and the UN system, urging us to do more and find new solutions. Just like the Executive Director of UN said, and I quote, "You cannot change the world without including business." Over the course of UNEA 3, more than 60 business representatives, including many from our group, the Global Business Alliance for the Environment, have convened here in Nairobi to ensure the reflection of business solutions, concerns, and expertise in UNEA 3. We have also hosted a business symposium under the theme Businesses Beat Pollution to exhibit the growing recognition of business role and responsibility to help create enabling environments to tackle pollution within the context of sustainable development. The Business and Industry Major Group has come together under the banner of the Global Business Alliance for Environment to reiterate our commitment to help achieve the SDGs and move towards a pollution-free planet. We look forward to continuing to work with the UN Environment, governments, and others to seek and support new models of business and commercial activity that are cleaner, less polluting, more responsible, and always people-oriented. Our message here is that innovation is not only for technology, but also for forums of discussion, partnerships, policy design, and assessments. Addressing pollution requires sound regulation with enforcement and national capacity building. Addressing pollution requires sound regulation with enforcement and national capacity building, market-oriented approaches, voluntary efforts, and the removal of counterproductive discussions and subsidies. To do this, active, substantive, and recognized engagement of all groups, including business, is needed to inform, raise the ambition of, and implement the outcomes of UNEA and UN Environment initiatives. Lastly, we encourage the UN Environment to continue the Science Policy Business Forum, and we hope to organize future business symposia in tandem with this initiative. Until the next UNEA, we look forward to continuing dialogue, cooperative action, and partnership with governments, stakeholders, the UN Environment, as we all move towards achieving a pollution-free planet. Mr. President, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And last, I'd like to give the floor to Lily Tanui, a high school student from Kenya on behalf of all major groups. Lily?
Thank you, Chair. Dear Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I am 18-year-old Lily Tanui from Kenya. We welcome the developments achieved in Nairobi, including the first ever ministerial declaration. We thank the UNEA 3 presidency, the member states, and the UN environment. We commit to supporting the implementation through collaboration. However, between now and UNEA 4, we call for sustained efforts towards transparent reporting and accountability mechanisms. The impunity in the cases of environmentalists murdered across the world is disturbing. We welcome the strategy of the protection of environmental defenders and strongly demand for continued solidarity. Distinguished delegates, the world cannot remain silent while our communities and people continue to suffer. Finally, we call upon the member states to provide necessary financial support to UN environment to help them achieve their ambitious targets and create a viable link to the HLPF. Distinguished delegates, progress is a long and continuing process. The system is not perfect and it might never be, but it is our obligation to ensure that tomorrow's system is better than today's. Pamoja twaweza, together we can. I thank you.
Thank you, Lily. We have concluded our list of speakers for the third session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. But there is one that is missing. That is myself. I have the time running already. Dear friends, let me capture this moment and have a relaxed breath. My heart speaks in Spanish, so I'm going to speak in Spanish.
After more than a year and a half, after the second United Nations Environment Assembly, we've carried out preparatory work where we promoted transparency, openness, inclusivity, and we have finally reached the end of this UNEA 3. It has been an honour to represent you all here. I would like to thank the Secretariat and my team for their support during these more than 18 months of work. I would also like to thank the members of the Executive Bureau of the CPR. A great achievement of this process has been the work coordinated between the two executive bureaus of the Assembly and the Committee of Permanent Representatives. I believe this must continue. In these 2 months, we have seen a greater number of opinions and cultures and perspectives. That is why we respect the consensus, teamwork, and transparency. These are all key elements for success. The presence of more than 170 countries here is a reflection of the great relevance of the environmental agenda at global level. I would like to make a call to all delegations here present and to all environment ministers and other ministers for them to continue in this participatory spirit with respect for human rights and for an ecologically balanced world. We need the UN to empower citizens and all relevant stakeholders. Their participation, which is real and effective within UNEA, provide us with perspectives of knowledge which are required in order to achieve the results which we aspire to. Your action and commitment are essential on the path towards sustainable development. To all members and representatives of the major groups and other relevant stakeholders within the United Nations Environment Assembly, thank you very much during this session, and thanks to political will and the serious and responsible commitment of each one of the member states, and to the valuable contributions of all sectors of civil society, we have adopted 11 resolutions, 3 decisions, and 1 ministerial declaration. The threat of pollution to the well-being of humankind and ecosystems as a whole needs to be addressed with actions and measures which are responsible, which require the participation and involvement of each and every one of the citizens of the world. The results of this assembly will provide us with concrete solutions and actions to continue to prevent and fight against pollution. We will thereby contribute to the aspirations of our heads of state and government as reflected in the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and the SDGs. These results need to be shared with other fora. They need to inspire concerted action from the various stakeholders and sectors involved. It's the responsibility of each and every one of us to ensure that environmental sustainability is integrated in all policies towards sustainable development. Our commitment needs to be clear in order to respond to the needs of the most vulnerable among us, including children and women, for both present and future generations. To my successor, distinguished Sim Kisler, Minister of Environment for Estonia, I would like to present my support and wish him every success in his management. I leave this post convinced more than ever that the United Nations Environment Assembly is and will continue to be the most relevant forum for the promotion of a better world where governments, strategic stakeholders and individuals can find a reference point and inspiration so they can live sustainably with the environment. Thank you very much.
Well, I wish now to open, other matters, please, the Secretariat.
Thank you, Mr. President, and really, I just want to underscore on behalf of all the Secretariat what Executive Director has said, but I won't be long. I'm known for long interventions, but this is not the case. We have, as a matter of fact, a small token of gratitude that we have done as a staff of UN Environment Program. And when you recognize the work of the Secretariat, it's really not mine. It's those that went to the airport to receive you when you arrived and to offer assistance and voluntarily gave their time to go there. Those that prepared your DSA, those that arranged the catering, all the secretaries that were there preparing communications, the unnamed colleagues that have been working very hard on your reports, screen editing. It's the whole organization really that makes this assembly possible. So I can't really take any credit for myself. This couldn't have been possible for the entire organization. So as organization, we have prepared a little first recognition to our Bureau members for the leadership, which it's very modest, but we would like to now give them to you first, Mr. President, just a little certificate as recognition for your outstanding leadership. John, it's a pre-retirement gift, and it says, you know, really from the heart, for your exceptional leadership and outstanding accomplishments. It says as Vice President, but really as friend of UN Environment, it should have said. Now always, Roxanne, as a rapporteur. My colleagues will now proceed to give a small token of our appreciation. Let me start with the delegation of Barbados, if Minister Lowe is still in the room. Thank you, Minister Lowe, for making your way up to here. Our Minister of Environment of Nigeria, our Minister of Environment of Iraq, Dr. Paje from the Philippines, Mr. Smers, the delegation has unfortunately left, but we have here a token of appreciation. Montenegro as well. Thank you so much. On behalf of all the Secretariat, please. Now, as you all may recall, this assembly would not have been possible, really, without the symbolic contributions that each and every member state from many regions of the world made to ensure that we made it up to here. This assembly was very uncertain in its financing, in its resources, and countries, all countries, many countries came up to the plate and stepped up and ensured that this assembly remained alive. We have a very small token also, and I wish my colleagues now to invite to distribute them. First to Australia, who made a symbolic contribution. Thank you, Australia. Colleagues, the certificates are here. Can you please, someone? Here? Here? They're coming, huh? I think we're going to need more than one person to do it quickly. Victor, Charlotte. Okay. European Commission. Finland, France, very particularly Kenya, Kenya here, India, thank you very much, New Zealand, the Nordic Council, which is, as you know, composed of several countries, Finland, Norway, Denmark, and Finland will receive it on behalf of the Nordic countries, if possible. The Philippines, thank you very much. Romania, South Africa, Sweden, Switzerland, and there are two very important partners, one stakeholder organization, Konrad Adenauer Foundation from Germany, who made possible many of the stakeholders that are in the back to be here with us today. And last but not least, the UN office in Nairobi, who made a very generous contribution to the success of this assembly. The Sustainable Innovation Expo that some of you visited would not have been possible without the generous support also from Denmark. Thank you very much, Denmark, for that contribution that allowed us to make the Expo a reality. With that, Mr. President, really as Secretariat, the whole Secretariat, I have nothing else to add, but to thank you and invite you to proceed to your next agenda item.
Thank you very much, Jorge. I wish to turn your attention to agenda item 14, adoption of the report. Under this agenda item, the Assembly will consider the adopt the proceedings of the first 2 days of the third session. So I now invite the rapporteur, Ms. Roxanne Bilderling of Belgium, to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to present the UNEP/EA3/L1 draft proceedings of the United Nations Environmental Assembly at its third session, which contains the outcomes of the third session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly and its deliberations. The draft proceedings are available online at the resolutions platform under the in-session documents section. The third session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly of the United Nations Environment Programme was held at the headquarters of the Environment Programme in Nairobi from 4th to 6th December 2017 under the theme Toward a Pollution-Free Planet. I will not read the whole draft of the proceedings, but we address the substantial items such as credentials of representatives, the work of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, mainly on consideration of draft resolutions and decisions, performance of the program of work and budget, including implementation of the resolutions of the Environment Assembly, administrative and budgetary issues, international environmental policy and governance issues, and also the draft of the proceedings presented major outcomes of the high-level segment. In general, we were honored to have 1,197 approved member states, 711 major groups and stakeholders, not member states but participants, yes. 711 major groups and stakeholder participants and the private sector, 94 intergovernmental organizations. We were also honored to invite the following delegations to present their opening remarks. We had His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency David Granger, President of Guyana, His Excellency Anthony Carmona, President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, and His Excellency Mr. Miroslav Lajcak, President of the General Assembly. We also had Ambassador Marie Chatardova, the President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. I propose the Assembly to adopt the report with the understanding that Member States may present their observations to the Secretariat, who will polish the report, taking into account those valuable inputs and comments. I am also very pleased to share with you the successful outcomes of the third open-ended meeting of the Committee of Permanent Representatives and the Committee of the Whole. 11 draft resolutions and 3 draft decisions were agreed to be adopted by the Assembly under the leadership of my dear friend, His Excellency John Moretti, Chair of the Committee of Permanent Representatives, and Mr. John Matusak, the Chair of the Committee of the Whole, and also the hard work and flexibility of all the delegations. I wish to express my deepest gratitude to all the distinguished delegates for your guidance and support during my tenure as a rapporteur in the Bureau of the Assembly. It has been a privilege to serve at this third session of the United Nations Assembly. I would also like to thank the Secretariat for the very good cooperation, and I would like to single out also Rosemary, who is always discreetly sitting behind, but has worked very hard in compiling the report as well. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Roxanne. Does the Assembly wish to take note of the report of the Assembly? I see no objections. It is so agreed. In recognition to rights accorded by the rules of procedures, the Assembly will accord the right of reply for 2 minutes to the following 2 delegations: Armenia, followed by Azerbaijan. Armenia. Armenia, you have the floor. No? Azerbaijan.
Armenia.
Armenia. Who is?
No. Azerbaijan should start. Sorry, Azerbaijan should start because they should start.
Azerbaijan.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not really willing to take much of your precious time as we are almost at the end of the program. Nevertheless, I feel obliged to use our right of reply as unfortunately out of the context, the delegation of Armenia in its attempt to deliberately mislead the respective delegations attending the plenary session demonstrated disrespectful attitude towards position of international community as well as the norms and principles of international law. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to discuss the challenges, and we discussed the challenges through the 3 days that face our planet and to find the solutions to make our planet best place to live. In our national statement, We have clearly addressed those issues, the ways how to tackle them, as well as the results that we have achieved thanks to hard work. Among the serious causes of pollution in the entire region of the Southern Caucasus, we have also indicated the occupation of 20% of internationally recognized territories of Azerbaijan by neighboring Armenia. Just to remind you that this occupation was condemned by UN Security Council. However, instead of complying with international law, Armenia using this very important platform is trying to justify its illegal aggressive policy to promote a puppet regime illegally established on the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. Mr. President, seizing the opportunity, on behalf of the government of Azerbaijan, I would like to thank you for the successful and effective UNEA presidency. A UNEP team led by Mr. Erik Solheim and all the colleagues for constructive and transparent dialogue. Also would like to congratulate His Excellency Mr. Siim Kiisler, Minister of Environment of Estonia, and wish him success in this not very easy journey. And finally, we reiterate Azerbaijan's strong commitment to continue its preventive measures against pollution as well as other destructive efforts that undermine our environment and peace. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Azerbaijan. Your comment has been noted. I now wish Armenia is okay. Armenia, please.
Thank you very much. I apologize for asking for the floor again, but I was compelled to do so. The delegation of Azerbaijan is continuing its defective tradition of abusing every possible platform by disseminating blatant distortion of the history and current state of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict resolution. I don't want to go into the details of the essence of the conflict, as it will take quite of your time and will divert us from our main task here. I just would like to stress that Nagorno-Karabakh, or Republic of Artsakh, has never been a part of independent Azerbaijan. It was granted to Soviet Azerbaijan on July 5, 1921 by unilateral decision of Stalin, which even for those times was a clear violation of Soviet procedures. During that very Soviet period, Azerbaijan has exhausted the level of trust of the population of Nagorno-Karabakh while governing the Nagorno-Karabakh by suppressing the right of Armenian majority living there. During the entire period of being of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast with Azerbaijan SSR, the leadership of this republic had been regularly and consistently violating the rights and interests of the Armenian population. Today, Azerbaijan is continuing with the very same logic. It spreads hatred towards Armenians, glorifies ISIS-style murders of Armenians, thus encouraging new killings on the highest level. Blaming its neighbor for its inability to deliver on its own commitments, both on domestically and internationally, has become a usual practice for Azerbaijan. Several independent investigative reports by independent bodies were published where dazzling records of corruption and abuse of public funds by the ruling elite were revealed. We encourage Azerbaijan to make genuine efforts to address their systematic problems, including endemic corruption, lack of transparency and accountability, as well as persistent crackdowns of civil society and human rights activists ascertain the SDGs, particularly those related to building peaceful and inclusive societies that are based on respect for human rights, rule of law, and good governance. And just a small piece of information for the delegation of Azerbaijan. With Azerbaijan is abusing the floor here by bringing up the issue of the conflict and drilling our working process. Another meeting between the ministers of foreign affairs.
Delegate, you've exhausted your time. We're sorry. Yes. Yes, I'm sorry. Time's off. Thank you very much. Our comments are noted, and I hope next assemblies we use our time to discuss environmental issues in our assembly and the political issues be left to United Nations in New York. Thank you very much. I now wish to declare the third session of the UN Environment Assembly closed.